welcome to the Shot Clock Podcast with me, Jago. It's Monday morning, it's 8 a.m. Today's guest is a former Sligo All Stars player, has made the transition now to their head coach position. Former Irish teammate of mine, Shane O'Meara.
Hi everybody, welcome to the Shot Clock Podcast. Today I am talking to Shane O'Meara, Sligo All Stars head coach, former Super League and National League player with, this is something I only learned 20 minutes ago, Sligo, Trident's Dublin, Trident's Galway, Castlebar and the Great Ballina. Also a former Irish teammate of mine. That's a whole different podcast that we need to record separately, put an 18 sticker on and let it out after dark. Well, welcome to the podcast, Shane. How's things, pal?
Man, sure. Good to see you, buddy.
Good to see you. How have you been keeping?
Great. Really, just other than the lockdown, I was just getting through it, you know. And it's I'm teaching, so doing all that stuff on Zooming every day now at the moment.
And so that's what you're doing now? Everything's a Zoom lesson?
Yeah.
That's tough. That's tough, pal. That's tough.
Could be worse.
Look, at least you have a job. That's the main thing at the minute, really, isn't it?
Yeah,
you're in a better position than a lot of people.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
So the way this is going to work, it's 11 simple questions, allegedly simple questions. We're just going to take it all the way back. We're going to take it back to the start of your basketball career and bring it right up. It's basketball. It's everything. It's more about getting to know you rather than the X's and O's, which I think a lot of the podcasts are at the minute. It's breakdowns, and I want to get people to know you as a player, you as a coach, you as a personality, because I know what it's like. And look, this could go on for the next 6 hours, especially with me and you. Who knows? So we'll start at the very start. Who, what, or why inspired you to play basketball?
I started, I think I was 7. My dad came from Kerry, from Killarney, and he had a bit of a background in basketball there. So he would have played with a lot of those guys back in the day, and he went off to UCC and played there. And then when he moved to Sligo, he started up, it was like just community games, you know, the crack with community games. So it was so funny. Every Thursday, there were very few people had cars even that then. So his dad used to do like 3 trips from our village to the next village over Collooney. There was a centre there, it's now called the Teeling Centre, was a GWI hall at the time. I think you might have played in it, but he used to do round trips over and back with people lying across the back window of the car, this kind of stuff, collecting the groups of people that play basketball. And it was just a free-for-all, really, but I just fell in love with the game. And I'd imagine there was very little basketball on TV other than the Irish Cup finals and that. But you would have been aware of the Lakers and stuff, you know, and I remember my dad having an old pair of Kareem Abdul-Jabbar Adidas shoes. So I just fell in love with the game and the culture, you know. So that was the start at 7. But I didn't really play organised club basketball till I think it was 13, I joined Sligo All Stars. And John McGowan was our coach then, and Carl Duggan, 2 amazing people. Did so much work for the game here. And Jerry Monaghan then after that would have done an awful lot of work for me and with our group in general, you know. So that was the start of basketball, you know. But basketball at that stage, TV, we were starting to see a little bit more. And Jordan obviously came on board. Sligo had their own National League team at the time, and they were quite good. The likes of Tom Hickey was still playing that time. He was an amazing player, an Irish guy. And then you had I remember the Americans coming into the school, to primary school, when I was in 5th class. And my dad was 6'6", so I'd never really seen anybody as big or bigger. And these 2 guys, a fellow called Bob Stanley, who's an agent now in Europe, and Scott McCarthy were the 2 Americans, I think, at the time, and they came in, and everybody was in awe. So that time we were getting 500-600 people every Saturday night to games in Sligo. Yeah,
that's incredible.
So that was the game. Was just that was great. You know, so I think it was the only show in town, really, you know, in terms of Sligo Rovers and Sligo GEA as well. But Sligo basketball was huge through the 80s and 90s up until the late 90s. You know, it was doing really well like that. You know?
Yeah, but you're seeing a resurgence again. Like I've been, obviously, through our friendship, I've seen all the work that you're putting in down with the All Stars at the minute, and you know, your promotion and the whole lot. Like it's grown again. it's coming around again. That second wave, like I hate saying second wave because of what's going on at the minute, but that second wave of basketball is definitely coming back down in Sligo.
Yeah, yeah. We're lucky. We've I think there's kind of like a basketball kind of brethren almost. It's like basketball is still there in the core of Sligo, you know, and as soon as it starts up and there's some bit of organisation and a little bit of success, and we had supporters just coming back out of the woodwork, which is great. So we, even like in the last couple of years, up until obviously the lockdown, that the first year I went back coaching, the 2016-2017 season, we were jam-packed in the gym again. It was like you couldn't get any more in there. So we were back to that kind of level. I'd say we were competing with Tralee for, you know,
for numbers,
for crowds. We just couldn't fit any more in. So it was about the product too. We had great people working in the committee and a DJ and stuff like that. And there's a friend of mine there, Glenn Monaghan, is involved in the club. And like he really is a driving force behind an awful lot of the initiatives. You know, he really he's passionate about the club, really, more so than anything else. And it's just, you can have all the success as a player and all the success as everything else, but unless you have somebody like that as well that's willing to dedicate their life.
Behind every great club is a great committee. Like that's the truth. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You've seen it over the years. So I mentioned that you're currently coaching, but I've played for, you know, 4 or 5 teams within your career. Yeah. So my next question is, out of all those teams, who has been your favourite teammate and why?
Favourite teammates.
And you've played with some legends of the game, to be fair.
Yeah, I was very lucky. Very lucky. In my mind, I've probably played with 2 of the best Irish players ever to have played the game. And that's, you're looking at Michael Bree. For me, was, you know, he never came back to play here. But I had the privilege of playing alongside him for one season. We won the Division 1 in 97, 98. And Michael was only 17 years of age at the time. And I think for me, he was just streets ahead. He was playing the game in a slow motion. The game was just happening. He could just dictate at that age. There was none of the Americans on the opposing teams could guard him. When if he wanted to, he could go off and score. Like the last game he played, we said to him, Mike, this is your last game before he went to Davidson. Just go do your thing, you know, tonight, because we were actually winning most of our games by a big margin. We were doing really well. He had 35 points in that game at his ease. It was just like, okay, just switch on. It's 17.
I remember playing against him down at the camp we were talking about. We went down, our under-19 team went down to Sligo, I think the summer of 93. And Tom Doherty brought us down. And I remember playing with him and against him during pickups. And as you said, he was just, everything slowed down for him. He saw the whole court.
Yeah.
He was different class. And
compared to today's, you know, he got very little basketball compared to what kids are getting now with, like, you know, so many tournaments and that. And coaching, he wasn't exposed to as much coaching here. A lot of his game was playing by himself. I'm not joking you, on an outdoor court in Merville, across from the showgrounds where the Sligo Rovers play. He had a big family, so his mum used to boot him out the door in the morning. There was no room in the house for all the kids, and he went over there every day. Hail, rain, and snow. People thought he was out of his mind playing one-on-one against virtual players, you know. And the odd time kids would walk by and join in and play 3-on-3 or 2-on-2 with him, and they go downtown and hang around and smoke a few fags, come back up and breezy, still be there. Like, you know, that's the dedication he put in. Like, for me, he was kind of like a poor man's Steve Nash. You know, if he was a little bit more athletic, his career would have gone to higher levels. But he went to Europe and did very well there. You know, and as much as we look back with rose-tinted glasses, there are very few Irish players who played in our leagues here who could have gone abroad and played and like he, you know, gotten on. So he's one of the guys, right, that came up. There's a guy that came to mind when you were saying that, is a guy with tridents. A fella that you know, I'm sure, is Chris Murray.
Oh, I know. Right, really quick segue here. Big Chris and my uncle Stephen were best mates growing up, and they played together all the way
I
up
knew there was
to
a connection.
called OC Hawks, and based out of O'Connell's down behind Croke Park. And Chris was one of the groomsmen at my uncle's wedding. I was a young whippersnapper of a groomsman, but Chris Murray is an absolute gentleman.
Yeah,
a gentleman.
So I'm not putting him in the same category as Michael Bree player-wise, but I'm sure he'll laugh at that. But as a teammate, he was one of the nicest guys. I was only a kid playing I was only in college in Dublin, and he put me under his arm and he looked after me so well. You know, always made sure you had a few quid in your pocket if you were stuck, or, you know, instilled confidence in you, because I was moving into a club where I knew nobody. So he was just, and I was fighting him for his spot. And yet he was the most welcoming guy you could imagine. So, and God rest him, Mick Brew was the coach there. One of the greatest gentlemen of Irish basketball.
Absolutely.
So I loved him. He was very good.
Absolutely. Great guy. Great guy.
So I have another few guys here I wanted to name, because there's so many. There's a guy, a club guy here, Fergal Kelly, one of my best friends, but like love playing with him because he's one of those energizer guys, you know, and always positive about everything, right? You had Puff Summers and Diora. When I played in Ballina, I loved playing. Puff was here for his first year, but I played a couple of years with Diora. Diora played with us in Sligo. I played with him in Castlebar, and I played with him in Ballina. And we had so much fun together off the court and on the court. But like, he'd always hook you up with a crazy pass out of the post or something that nobody saw.
He was unbelievable. Diora was fantastic.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
High IQ guy. But I think in terms of enjoying the game, right? And it's funny that we were talking about it, is in terms of enjoying the game together and being inspired by someone around you. Jason Sherlock was my guy that I picked, because Jay was the underdog. He was the undersized guy all the time, but he played with the heart of a lion all the time. So you're thinking, like, if this guy if this guy is able to do so much and, you know, fight so much through everything, you know, he brought you with him, and he was a great captain. He was the captain of our underage team that time.
He was, that year, yeah. When we went to Estonia.
Yeah, in Estonia. But do you remember the time he nearly got concussed? He was turned upside down and landed on his head. We like, today he'd have been shipped off for concussion protocol, you know. And he got up and played on in the second half.
He just played on.
But he was lying on his back for 10 minutes in the sideline, not moving, you know.
Well, never. It was an old Russian aeroplane hangar that we played in. It was May. It was so hot. It was roasting, and the advertising boards were bolted to the ground. And Jay hit one of them. I'll never forget it. But like, Jay, like, I always tell the story that if, you know, people say to me, how talented was Jason Sherlock? And then be like, right, so he was on the Irish basketball team. He played soccer for Shamrock Rovers. He trials with Liverpool, and he was a Dublin GAA legend.
And a hurler and a golfer,
But that's it. But it was one of those things I said, look, if three of us were in the room, and I picked my biggest talent, you picked your biggest talent, and somebody else picked their biggest talent, and that was a new sport, and there was going to be an Irish team, and the three of us were like, sure, this is our biggest sport. We know what we're doing here. I always say within a month, Jay would have taken one of our spots. He was that good.
Yeah. He's kind of like, and it's funny when we mentioned Michael Bree had twin brothers, Pascal and Robert. Robert kind of got injured earlier on, but Pascal went on and played. Pascal played with Neptune when he's in Cork now, but he won a National League with Neptune. But those two guys were on the same kind of level in terms of any sport. Irish dancing, swimming, you know, anything that they took up came to them so naturally. And other guy, and Jay was just one of those, but he had the heart of a lion, like.
Yeah, so, he was a great team. He always picked you up. He always put you up.
Yeah. For me, as a culture coming up to Dublin with those national teams, it was kind of, you know, it was really intimidating. But the likes of yourself there and Jay, it was like open arms stuff immediately. It was amazing for me. So it was like, that was one of my favorite teams to ever play with, because it was like, and we're still here talking today, you know.
That's exactly it. Yeah, friendships made then. So moving on to the next question. Having played all those years Super League, and as you said to me earlier on, you actually played National League last year, which for before I couldn't believe. Fair play to you. I'm proud of you, buddy. Who was the toughest person you've had to guard, and who do you think guarded you the toughest over the years?
Oh man. Okay, so there were guys like, I remember playing, there was one guy, and I have to mention because And it's not, again, that he was the most talented basketball player, but the two of us used to knock absolute lumps out of each other playing basketball. And I remember the first year playing, he was younger than I was. And I remember, we were fighting for rebounds and fighting for position and fighting for whatever. And it was like a physical battle. You'd be bruised for a week after. And it was John Galvin from Limerick. And he went on to play midfield for Limerick. But I remember saying to him, you want to hit the weight room, buddy, one of the first years. Well, I'll never forget, we played them in the arena the following year. I remember seeing him walking in from the dressing room I said, oh, no. What's after happening here? And I think what had happened is he joined the Limerick GA squad and had beefed up, like he put on like probably 20 pounds of muscle. And every time we played each other, it was just constant banging, crashing into each other. And it was a physical battle. So that was a tough competitor for me. And then there was another guy that I was lucky enough to play the World University Games in Spain, right? In Magaluf in 1999. And we played Mexico. And there was a guy called Eduardo Nájera who went on to play for the Dallas Mavericks playing for Mexico. And another guy called Horacio Lamos who played for the Phoenix Suns. And I was probably the most physical guy in our team. We had taller guys, but I was probably the more physical guy. And I ended up having to mark this guy who was 7'2". He was like a Puerto Rican looking Shaq. That's what he looked like, Shaquille O'Neal, but maybe a bit smaller, but that's how big he was, right? And he had a hand like a tennis racket. And he posted me up at one stage and put his hand into my chest and caught the ball with his other hand, like his whole wingspan away from me. Dribbled into me, and I was physically fighting, trying to get position. There's no hope. And a little run hook shot, and he was so skilled as well. And I remember looking around at the bench, and Trevor Smullen was sitting on it, just looking out through his fingers at me. There was nothing I could do with him, but that was a different story. But then on the court here in Ireland, Liam McHale had to be the one. I ended up having to mark him a few times when I was playing with Castlebar and he was playing with Ballina. And he could play all 5 positions. So we had a relatively small team in Ballina. It was a young team, or in Castlebar. But when he knew I was guarding him, he went on the point. So there was me trying to play out of my comfort zone playing against him. But for a guy with 6'5", he could move so he was poetic, he was amazing. But my biggest thing was keep him out of the paint. If I can keep him out of the paint, he's not going to at least score on me. But then his creativity came in. So if he could create he made everybody else around him better too, So he was definitely, in terms of Irish players, the hardest guy for me to mark. It was impossible because matchup. I was 6'7", he's 6'5", but he was just so talented, like so skilled.
Would you go down the road that arguably the best Irish player ever?
Yeah, for sure.
To play in the league. Let's say in the league.
Yeah. The sad thing is he never got abroad to play.
It
was probably by choice, but it's a shame because you don't know. Yeah. He definitely had the ability to play. Here he could play and he could play all 5 positions on offense and defend all 5 positions here.
Yeah,
there's not too many guys who can do that.
He was super. Luckily I got to play him a couple of times, but
his footwork, Ger, was what it's the same with Jordan. The longevity and Kobe, the longevity in their game. Why did they last so long? He wasn't relying on athleticism. It was his footwork was amazing.
Yeah,
and
Brian.
Poise. Yeah,
Brian.
Yeah.
He's again high basketball IQ.
Mm.
So basketball players are superstitious, very superstitious. We all have our little routines and our pre-games. Have you any superstitions you're willing to admit to?
Sure. It's funny because I really wasn't. I'm not a superstitious person. Not really. I was trying to rack my brain for anything. There was nothing in particular that I was ever superstitious with. I always wanted to have a superstition.
Everybody had one.
I never had one. I think the only routine I had was in the free throw line. That was the only routine I had, and I stuck with it for I'd say all my career from as far back as I can remember.
Let me try and remember. Was it 2 dribbles, 1 bounce on your shot?
There you go. And swish every time. Every time.
Yeah, you could shoot free throws, unlike somebody who we won't mention.
60% of the time.
60%. I would have paid for a 60% free throw average. You paid for it.
You'd have paid for the foul to get there in the first place.
Well, that's true as well. The next thing is, right, so you have no superstitions. What are your favourite game shoes? Or do you stick to the same brand, or do you mind?
Right now, I really like Kobe's, right? But I remember back in the day, I liked Jordans, but my favourite ones of all were Reebok Pump, black Reebok Pump.
The D Brown model. 1991 D Browns, the Omnis. Were the ones he wore in the dunk competition when he bent down and gave it a little pump and got himself the extra?
No, they were after that. They were after that. I think they were 1993, around 92, 93, Reebok Pump. I tell you who had it. Philo had the same pair. I remember coming up with them thinking, all right, if Philo's got them, they're good.
I remember them. I remember the one you're talking about.
It made you jump 2 inches higher. You know?
I think that was just Philo, to be fair.
Yeah. That's what I thought. If he has them, they have to be good. Yeah.
That's somebody who I would have loved to see play over here for longer.
Oh, yeah. Like, I never saw a guy with such self-confidence, you know?
I went back and watched the 1991, actually, Alan Sherritt sent me the 1991 Sprite Cup final.
In Cork?
Bus Airing Cup final. No, it was 91? 93 from the arena.
Okay.
So, it was Philo's last season with us. And I always remember him being good, but like, we matched up week in, week out, day in, day out in practice. And like, Rob Keane gave me more trouble than Philo did.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, but I knew Philo was great. But I watched that game back and I was like, oh shit.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh, I see it now.
He was one of the best shooters. Yeah. But he hurt his back, though. Remember, in the States, he hurt his back, and it kind of took away from a lot of his athleticism.
He did his knee as well. And before, was he in Paris with us?
Yeah.
And he did his ankle in the game. He done his back before we flew out. Because remember, the Swedish physio actually did physio on him when we got over there.
You'd have to remember that part. Yeah.
No, it was a man. It was a quick hairy bloke, so it wasn't. That's something different you're thinking of, buddy. Keep it PG.
Okay. It's the other podcast.
Yeah, that's the story for that one. Yeah. So you played with some of the greats, as we've mentioned, Puff, Liam McHale, our Irish teams. We had some absolute legends on the team. Pat Glover as well.
Oh yeah.
So if you and 4 others going into a gym for a pickup game,
mm-hmm.
you and 4 positionally. Now you can pick players you've played with or players you wished you played with. Who are you taking from the Irish Super League? Who are you bringing into that gym?
It's funny because it's hard to pick those ones. So, like, straight away at point guard, I was looking at Breezy, right? Straight away, because
absolutely,
I remember Breezy just made you better by the simple fact that he saw everything for you. Like, one of the first games I ever played with Breezy, he hit me in the nose with a pass. I didn't expect it. And bang into the face, and it just landed in my hands under the rim. I didn't even know I was open myself until he hit me in the face with it. And he was 3 years younger than me, so he was a baby coming into the team. I was 20, it's like 21. He was 4 years younger than me. And he says, put your effing hands up. Keep your effing hands up. He said, you know, imagine. So that's the leadership that was in him as well. But he was a great point guard, right? So I had him at point. Two players that I love watching, right? I loved how St. Vincent's played the game back in the day, right? And Carl Donnelly, to me, I loved watching him play. Loved watching him play the game. He was kind of ahead of the curve, you know. He's one of the more athletic guys as a guard that time. I remember seeing going baseline and dunking over a guy, you know, as a 2 guard, and he could shoot the ball. He was tough. I love Stephen McGurk too. So I've kind of really, you know, and I wish Stephen McGurk was around now, that he was going through the strength and conditioning programs and this, you know, had the skills programs and everything. You know, one of the most talented guys in the league. So I have Carl, and Stephen. I've Liam McHale
at the 4.
obviously, but then I have John Teahan there too.
And you at the 5.
I have John Teahan.
You're throwing up between Teahan and McHale.
No, I'm choosing between Teahan. I go Mike Bree, Liam. I think probably for athleticism, I'm going to go with Stephen above Carl, right? Just having a guy on the fast break.
Controversial.
Yeah. And John Teahan then just covers so many bases. So you have John Teahan, Stephen McGurk, Liam, and Mike.
That's a fairly solid 5. Like you're winning a couple of games there.
Yeah. If I can get a few rebounds.
And if the fight goes down as well, like Liam, John Teahan, and you will probably bail out most fights as well. Like we're good.
For sure, right?
We're good. Yeah, we're definitely good.
Yeah, we'll let John in first, and Liam. I'll come in for the cleanup at the end.
Look,
Blitzkrieg. Yeah.
Look, Stephen wasn't going to get in there and get down the door.
Stephen won't be. Stephen will be.
Breezy won't either. He'll be standing cheering you on.
Two boys will looking for their gum shield. Yeah.
Oh, geez, remember those days, gum shields? Wow. Right, so we're going to change pace a little bit. We're going to talk about some music. So, top 5 musical artists of all time for you. And I've heard your musical taste when we were on away trips. So just be careful with this answer, because I don't know if you're talking bullshit or not.
See, Ger, you know, right? My taste in music is so eclectic. I don't know if there's a music I wouldn't listen to. Or
eclectic, is that what we're going with? We're going with eclectic.
Eclectic, buddy.
You as a teacher are going with eclectic. I have a different word for your musical taste. But look, if you want to go with eclectic, we'll leave it at eclectic.
Well, I honestly don't think there's a type of music I wouldn't fall in love with if I listen to it. You know, I can see the merit in every type of music. Like even death metal at some point, I'm sure at some point in the Gaeltacht, I think I listened to death metal. Right? I was going through a phase, right? So it's funny, it's just kind of, you know, it's funny how people come in and out of your life, right? And music and stuff, you associate it with all that kind of stuff. But like recently, you know, for me, different people have reappeared in my life, and I'm like, geez, oh man, and then the music that you associate or that you actually get to know it. So it's funny, the stuff that's come up recently for me. Like when I was younger, I used to, some of us, myself and a couple of my friends, we used to skype off school every now and again, right? Go from Summerhill downtown, and this little joint used to have a speaker outside in an archway, so we could hide in the archway, but they used to play jazz out of this speaker.
Okay.
7 of the boys used to be bopping inside. This is amazing. You know, after the first couple of classes, we missed a lot of physics, chemistry, but we really got into jazz over those few days, right? So that hadn't reappeared until recently for me. And this singer, Julie London, I don't know if you ever Cry Me a River, Julie London. She's popped up for me recently. But listen to Julie. As a kid in the car, Dire Straits was a huge one. My brother and I used to listen to Dire Straits quite a bit, right? My brother also, funnily enough, he'll never admit this, but he introduced me to rap. And it was Slick Rick the Ruda, MC Ricky D, back in the day, right in the 80s.
Wow. Yeah,
right? Slick Rick. And it went from there. I throughout my basketball career then, because the culture was hip hop, R&B, right? So absolutely. I was a Tupac, Biggie, loved all that. Moved on to, you know, I love all that, right? Then Usher and Maxwell as R&B singers, love that. Now here's where we're going to get funny.
I love the way you're leaving it. There's so much you're leaving out, but you know what?
Here we go. Jimmy.
If they're the 5 you want to go with, they're the 5.
Hey, I have 2 more for you. Buddy. 2 more.
Go on.
Jimmy Buffett.
Oh, Margaritaville. Amazing.
Yeah, Jimmy Buffett.
I just admitted that on a podcast. Sorry, go on, yeah, that's my street.
The fact that you said Margaritaville, you know enough, right? Everybody's got to listen to Jimmy. And I didn't believe in Jimmy until I met. It was through a group of American friends. But then I brought it. Myself and Terry Kennedy brought a group of guys to America in 2005. We brought a group of teenagers over, right? And I hadn't heard Jimmy Buffett in ages because he's not big over here. So we rented a 14-seater minibus, and I drove. Terry was supposed to share the drive, and I ended up driving all over the East Coast, right? And one day I was so pissed off. I was driving everywhere, and the boys were all sleeping. And they were all listening to their own music, and I'd be driving and look in the mirror, and they'd all be asleep. So one day in a petrol station, I picked up a Jimmy Buffett Greatest Hits album and stuck it in the DVD player. And the boys are, oh man, what the hell is that? Turn it off, turn it off. I said, no. So over the space of the week, we were there for 2 weeks. Over the space of the first week, after the first week was over, the boys were singing every song along with me in the bus. It was one of the greatest tunes. And to this day, there are guys who still every now and again they'll send me a text or a message on Facebook or whatever. They'll find a clip of Jimmy Buffett and send it on. You know, a guy called Damien O'Boyle that played with us that time. Great guys. So Jimmy Buffett, and the last one then is Chris Stapleton, Tennessee Whiskey. Tennessee Whiskey, buddy. You have to listen. You give that a listen. So that's it. So
look, I'm learning a lot. I'm learning a lot over these podcasts.
I did warn you, eclectic.
It's pretty far out there, I have to say, but I love it. Like look, music is one thing that never leaves your life. You know what I mean? And whether you're happy or sad, there's a song that you'll equate to, like or a road trip or a memory, or you see somebody and the first thing you think of is a song.
Yeah, and you go through stuff in life, and the meaning of the lyrics and songs, all of a sudden, you're like, oh, okay,
absolutely.
That's what's going on there.
That's what that means, or that reminds me of that time, absolutely.
Yeah.
So you said just there a second ago, R&B and hip hop, huge in the basketball culture, regardless of where you are in the world. So we're warming up. You're the DJ. What are the last 3 songs we hear before we walk off the court?
That used to be one of my favorite times in the game was the warm-up.
Yeah.
Because you could dunk all you want.
There's something nobody give out to you, yeah.
Because if you missed it, it was no big deal, you know. So, and one year in particular, we had Terry Smith playing with us.
Beast.
And the guy,
he could jump out of the gym.
And so it was like a dunk competition, and Niall Daly was with us. Niall could dunk, and Gordon Winchester, another guy that was with us, could dunk. But so that the music was huge for us that time, and we were allowed. We had a DJ, a resident DJ. It was unreal for the games. So we had this guy playing sound bites and everything, and so it was so funny because I
haven't been down to Tralee since their resurgence, the Warriors, but I've heard like now it's like smoke machines and strobe lights and DJ in the corner. Why isn't every club in Ireland doing this? Make it a spectacle.
It's the product.
Make it a show.
Well, I tell you what really annoyed us was that we had this guy, a guy called Philip Gillen. He was actually the local nightclub DJ, right? But he had like Homer Simpson sound bites. So if the opposition missed a free throw or a shot, it was like, don't! You know, he'd play during the game, or he'd have Marge on talking sweet talk to Homer or whatever. It was so funny. He had all different types. He had the NBA, all that going on through the game, right? So like the crowd were loving. That was as much part of the atmosphere as anything else. But some teams complained, or I don't know what happened, but we were told the following year, you're not allowed to do that anymore. So we weren't allowed to have a DJ. That's how badly it went. But anyway, 3 songs for you, right? You have to have Survivor in their Eye of the Tiger.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
That's a bit of a cliche, right? Then House of Pain, Jump Around.
That's me and you back in the arena back in the day.
Yeah. When you broke the rim, the first year of it, and you broke the spring load, the only spring loaded rim in the country, and you broke it.
Yeah. Yeah.
The last one is Juicy from Notorious B.I.G.
They're 3 solid picks, man.
Yeah.
They're 3 solid. Yeah, I like that.
I was going to throw in some Pavarotti for you, but I said I better not.
No, it doesn't really get me going in a warm-up. So here's a question that I got asked probably 10 years ago, and my answer at the time was terrible. But I wanted this question because we're all grown up now.
Mm-hmm.
And when we were younger, we all had dreams and aspirations to do all kinds of mad stuff in our lives, and we were convinced we were going to play in the NBA, and we were convinced we were the next big thing.
Mm.
So what advice would you give to a 16-year-old Shane O'Meara?
Oh, man. See, the game has changed so much, Jared. Like, the coaching has changed so much. And I was only talking to Trevor Smullen about this the other day. Like, if you could go back to be a player, never mind, to advise someone to go back and be a player, knowing how the game has changed, or knowing now what was coming. At 6'7", I was 6'7" at 16, but for me, and I understand why, I was never allowed to dribble the ball. I understand why. I was never allowed to shoot the ball as a player coming up. I was there to rebound and, defend the Americans and box out and get out of the way then after that. Outlet the ball and that was it. But like when you see, for example, when we went away in one of the first trips we went away, the point guards were as big as we were in other teams. You know what I mean? And the guys in our position were 7-footers. So that for me was like, you got to get out of your pigeonhole and work on your handle, work on other aspects of your game, your basketball IQ and your footwork. So for me, coaching now, having learned that, for me, coaching now, every player that walks in the door is treated the exact same for me, whether they're the biggest kid or the smallest kid. They're all going to have point guard skills, and then see what happens after that.
Brilliant.
So my advice for me would have been try and be a point guard at 16, and if it didn't work out, at least you have something to add.
It's going back to like the Cruyff model that Ajax have in the football. That when you come in through the door, you start as a goalkeeper, and then you move to a defender and a midfielder, and then you're a forward. But you get to play every position.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then you find your niche. Like you were saying there as a coach, myself and Rob Keane set up our own academy about 2 years ago up here in Tala. And like that, we treat everybody the same. Because like you, I was when I was skinnier, I was the guy on the wing, but I wasn't allowed to shoot. I wasn't a wing shooter, I was a wing driver. That's what I was there for. And as I grew into my body, I became like a 4-5. And I was there to rebound and outlet. I wasn't there to take a jump shot. And it's only now, like looking back and going, man, if I'd have added that to my game, it would have been serious.
Yeah, because with the athleticism you had, I think it's people, through their own, I suppose, lack of understanding maybe, or sometimes foresight, the way the game has changed. When you see the likes of Nikola Jokic at 7 foot, what he's able to do now.
Yeah.
Even Blake Griffin played as a point guard. Blake, he was superstar-esque. He played as a point guard, 6'10" power, but all that he can do because he had those skills coming up. It does kids a disservice, and I see it even with a guy that I coach at the moment, a fellow called Cian Lally. He's one of the better younger players in the country, but he was our biggest kid, under 12, under 14, and I had a battle sometimes with some other people as to why he wasn't playing as a post player. He's now not a whole amount bigger than he was at 14, but he's 6'3". Nobody can stay in front of him. He's one of the better wing players in the league at the moment.
And all because he wasn't.
I'm so glad that I fought that battle. Yeah, I'm glad I fought it, because for him, his game would have been null and void at the age of 17, 18. He would have been, undersized playing super or National League. He would never have been able.
And now he has the potential to go on and have a career.
Yeah. And he's playing Gaelic football for Sligo as well. A great guy. Yeah.
Absolutely fantastic. So second last question.
Yeah.
And this is another one that you're gonna have to put your thinking cap on for. So, dead or alive, 5 dinner guests you'd invite round to your house from any walk of life at all. They can be relatives that have passed. They can be relatives that are still here. Sport, music, whatever. Who are the 5 people you're sitting down to dinner with?
Yeah, it's a funny one. If you had asked me that before the lockdown, things might have changed a little bit. But there are a couple of people, obviously. The first person that I thought of was my dad, right? Obviously, he introduced me to basketball, but he was my hero growing up. He died.
This is the top result.
Oh, sorry, the phone I forgot there. He died 7 years ago, but he was. You remember my dad? He drove me.
I remember that. Yeah.
He did so much for us.
And your biggest cheerleader.
the best guy in the world, you know.
I was lucky enough to have a point with him in Sligo. I shouldn't really admit that because I reckon I was
only 12, right?
I had a point with your dad.
Yeah. So dad was he was an amazing guy. So there's a song, Dance with My Father again. I'd love to just sit down and have a meal with him again. You know, spend the day with him. So I could wipe the other 4 out, you know, for that reason. But of course, you want to throw me a mum in there beside me. You'll allow me that much to put my mother in beside me.
Of course, absolutely.
But anyhow, I had. There's 2 comedians I love. There's Alan Maxwell, the Dublin lad. It's Alan Maxwell, isn't it?
Andrew Maxwell.
And Andrew Maxwell. Maxwell, the comedian.
Yeah.
I just love his sense of humor, and he's a really intelligent guy. But Sarah Millican, I'd probably take Sarah Millican above him. I'm listening to her. She's just so funny, all right. I was torn between Barack Obama and John Wooden, but I think I'd probably go with John Wooden. The basketball coach, put him in there. There's David Attenborough, because I'm huge into nature and huge into the outside world. Love to sit down with him for a while. It's going to be a long meal now, but there's another guy then for just one of those guys that I really enjoyed spending time with growing up, and it's nothing to do with basketball. It's a friend of mine called Dominic Brennan. He's a Tipperary lad from college. He's a teacher, and he's one of those guys that you or I could say something and he'll say the exact same thing and everyone starts laughing. He's just one of those naturally funny, gifted guys. He could say the alphabet and the place would be falling apart with laughter. He's just one of those naturally funny guys. So yeah, so you're looking at my dad, probably Sarah Millican, John Wooden, Dominic Brennan. He's going to get some laugh when he hears this, and David Attenborough.
Fantastic. Right, so here's the next question. What are we eating? What are we having? And are you ordering in or are you cooking? Because I know you can cook based on an earlier off-camera conversation.
Yeah.
So what are we having?
Oh, man. There's a couple of friends of mine who've kind of inspired me into cooking recently. So, and the lockdown didn't help matters. It's going to have to be steak, Ger. Like the main course is going to have to be steak.
Absolutely.
Yeah. There was a funny story with my dad. He's a Kerry man, you know, and so he used to always travel everywhere with a full car. He'd bring 4 or 5 of us in the car to a game or whatever. But on the way home from Dublin, particularly, we'd call into Jimmy's in Drummond. And he'd go in the door and he'd just go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 steaks. He wouldn't even ask you what you wanted, but he ordered for you, you know. So steak. So 5 steaks and mushrooms, onions, the whole lot. Yeah. So it's steak for dinner.
Love it. Absolutely love it. And our last question, we've got to the end of the shot clock. We're coming down the stretch. Who would you like to see as a guest on the shot clock pod?
Oh, man. See, you remember this. You often hear the term, you should never meet your heroes.
Yes.
We met Magic Johnson and he was horrible to us.
We did meet Magic Johnson, yeah.
He was horrible. I'm sure he was fed up. He was trying to play poker at the time. But
Can you remember the wad of cash on that table? Can you?
I thought we were going to rob it.
I have never seen so. I worked for Group 4 Securicor, and I've never seen that much money in my life, in real life, on a table in an airport.
Yeah. Oh man, but I never forget. I think Jason Sherlock kept the piece of paper that Magic refused to sign. I think that was the story at the time. He didn't sign any autographs.
No, he wouldn't sign any autographs. That's right.
Somebody kept the piece of paper that he touched. He touched it, but gave it back. He wouldn't sign it. But he had a minder with him. But I think he was on an AIDS awareness.
He was on an AIDS awareness tour, and he played. We were in Finland, and he played the night. He played the night before, and we were playing in the same gym the next night. Except there was 20,000 people when he played, and our gym was
20 including.
O Meara did not have the same draw as Magic Johnson. I've no idea why.
Tragic Bronson. Yeah.
So
on the scoreboard, the timer, right? I'm going to go basketball with that, but it'd be lovely. You know the way you always play better when there's somebody in the gym?
Yes.
You want to impress them. I was thinking Kobe, right? But then I don't know if you ever heard of the player Skylar Diggins.
Skylar Diggins, why does that ring a bell?
You're going to have to Google her, and you'll understand. And you'll definitely play out of your skin. You'll play like you're 19.
So skills. Is that what you're telling me?
Skylar Diggins, you'll play better. You always play better with a girl in the gym anyway, Jer.
Rumor. There's no truth in that. There is no truth in that at all. Full disclaimer.
So Skylar Diggins, buddy. Yeah, I was going to put Kobe there, but then you shouldn't meet your heroes. So
Skylar Diggins. I need to Google Skylar Diggins.
Yeah.
Or maybe I don't need to Google Skylar Diggins. Look, Shane, it's been an absolute pleasure as always talking to you. It's great catching up. As I said to you, we need to do a proper off the camera podcast over 18 stories from Irish trips abroad and funny stories where haircuts got us in trouble and all of those things. But we'll discuss that at a later date. Look, I appreciate your time. Thanks for all the work that you're doing, teaching the kids down there. It's not easy at the minute, but fair play to you. Love to the family.
And, you're a legend.
I'll talk to you soon, pal.
Cheers, buddy. Thanks for doing that.
No problem.
Yeah.
So everyone, that was Shane's episode. You may have noticed, you may have not. There was no video with today's podcast for some reason. When I went back into the file, it was audio only. But Shane was one of the first people I recorded, so that's back in the days when I hadn't a breeze what I was really doing. Look, you're missing nothing. It's me and him, two ugly old lads having a chat. But sure, look, these things happen. Anyway, head over to our Instagram story to vote on Shane's 5 versus Team Scally, who got a draw against the 96, 72 and 10 Chicago Bulls during the week. Just shows how popular Miss Scally and her team are. Head over to Spotify to get Shane's warm-up songs, another 3 classics. And a couple of shout outs this week. One, again, to the lads in Roscommon Signs for my Shot Clock podcast signage. A happy birthday to Sharon Kelly and Mark Mulholland this week. Mark, friend of the show, and has been giving me some advice as regards the podcast. And I really think when his documentary on Dave Hopla comes out, I think everyone's going to really enjoy it. Can't wait for that to come out on general release. Sharon Kelly, call me. We need to record your episode. If I have to hear one more time, when are you doing Sharon Kelly's episode? I'll crack up. All right, so just give me a shout during the week. Back recording this week to close out season 1. A couple more interviews to do, and then we'll roll on to season 2. I'll be announcing those guests in the next week or two. And look, thanks a million to everybody who's still tuning in now that you're back playing. I know it's not as the priorities have changed now that you're back training. But look, keep tuning in. Maybe your favourite player's coming up next. And until Thursday, it's Jago saying, I'll see you on the court soon.